Hello, everybody, and welcome to History/Law Bite number 252, dated May 13th, 2021. I'm Walter, your mobile historian and blue-collar scholar. This History/Law Bite is entitled President Obama's Supreme Court Appointments. Barack Hussein Obama served as the 44th President of the United States of America from January 20th, 2009 to January 20th, 2017. Obama, a Democrat, was able to appoint two individuals to the Supreme Court of the United States during his two terms in office. Both of these vacancies occurred during his first term in office. Three vacancies actually occurred during his entire administration. But due to the opposition from the Republican Party, he was only able to fill his initial two vacancies. More on that later on, however. In naming two individuals to the Supreme Court of the United States, President Obama was able to replace the following judicial legends. First, Justice David Souter in 2009, and Justice John Paul Stevens in 2010. Souter had been appointed to the court in 1990 by President George Herbert Walker Bush. Stevens had been appointed to the court in 1975 by President Gerald Rudolph Ford. Souter, although initially a member of the court's conservative bloc, had long been a member of the court's liberal wing from the mid-1990s forward. Indeed, Souter's judicial record greatly offended those who had supported his nomination many years earlier, and for the individuals who thought he was going to be a home run conservative, they made sure that all future Republican nominees were people who could truly be trusted to remain committed to the cause. So Souter's retirement certainly was greeted positively by Republicans, and the fact that he was stepping down under a Democratic administration made Democrats very happy as well. All right. With Justice John Paul Stevens having been appointed by Ford 35 years before he announced his retirement, Stevens, though initially a conservative, Stevens too had moved left over his years on the court, and had become the dean of the court's liberal wing, a position he had assumed in 1994 with the retirement of Justice Harry Blackmun. All right. Both Souter and Stevens were committed liberal justices, and therefore whomever President Barack Obama chose to replace them with would not alter the composition of the court at that point, as he was expected to, of course, appoint liberal members to replace them. While he was running for president, Barack Obama explained in detail many times the type of justices he would like to see on the Supreme Court, expressing strong admiration for former Chief Justice Earl Warren, as well as former Associate Justices William J. Brennan Jr. and Thurgood Marshall. He also expressed his profound admiration for then incumbent Justices David Souter, who he would ultimately replace, as well as Stephen Breyer. All right. So the people already had an idea of the type of justices that would be coming to the court under an Obama presidency. All right. So President Obama's first chance to name a justice came in April of 2009 when Justice David Souter announced his intention to retire at the end of the court's current term at that point. All right. Souter had served on the court for 19 years and was 69 years old at that point, which is, all things considered, pretty young these days for retirement from the Supreme Court. The last time you had a justice step down in their 60s from the court, voluntarily anyway, was Justice Tom Clark in 1967, who was, of course, succeeded by Thurgood Marshall. All right. So Souter had long expressed a desire to leave Washington and the hustle and bustle. He was a native New Hampshireite and had longed to return back to his home state. And his departure under certainly a president of his choice gave President Obama his ability to make his first appointment. President Obama's advisors had long compiled a list well before Souter announced that retirement, however. And by the time the retirement was announced, the following individuals had already been under consideration for quite some time. They included, but were not limited to, Judge Sonia Sotomayor of the Second Circuit, Solicitor General Elena Kagan, Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano, Seventh Circuit Judge Diane Wood, and others. Okay, ultimately, the list was boiled down to Sotomayor, Kagan, and Wood, and he would, with time and careful consideration, select Second Circuit Court of Appeals Judge Sonia Sotomayor to replace David Souter on the Supreme Court, nominating her on June the 1st, 2009. All right. She was viewed by many as a moderate liberal. All right. She was palatable by many members of the Republican Party, and Democrats certainly had no real opposition to her nomination. An interesting irony is that Judge Sonia Sotomayor was also on President Bush's short list, President George W. Bush, as a possible replacement to Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. However, he, of course, would ultimately choose Justice Samuel Alito to fill that vacancy. But just the mere fact that she was on his short list is deep. And had she been chosen, she would have been another, essentially, David Souter for the Republicans because, of course, Justice Sonia Sotomayor is arguably the court's most liberal member today. All right. So Justice Sonia Sotomayor, having been through a, somewhat up and down confirmation process, would ultimately be confirmed to the Supreme Court on August 6th, 2009. All right, by a vote of 68 to 31. All right, so overwhelming support from Democrats and a small amount of support from Republicans. All right, so that filled President Obama's first Supreme Court vacancy. And of course, Justice Sonia Sotomayor hit the ground running, having served as a judge on the Second Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals for quite some time prior to her elevation to the Supreme Court. And she has certainly defined herself as a judge who certainly can relate to many of the experiences of the helpless and the downtrodden and the individuals in society feeling marginalized. She has certainly placed herself as an ally of such persons coming before the court. And like I said, she certainly has a bleeding heart more than virtually all of her other colleagues and is the court's most liberal member, in my opinion. She greatly resembles the philosophies of Justices William J. Brennan Jr. and Thurgood Marshall. She, in my opinion, also is probably even more liberal than the man she succeeded, Justice David Souter. All right, so she gets 5 stars in my book. So that's President Obama's first appointment, Justice Sonia Sotomayor. All right, so his next chance at an appointment came in 2010, like I said, when Justice John Paul Stevens announced his intention to retire from the Supreme Court as well. All right. At this point, Stevens was 90 years old, all right, and had been on the court for nearly 35 years. All right. It is without debate that he was all too honored to have the nation's first African-American president name his successor on the court. All right. Stevens has certainly did not wish to retire under a Republican administration, as he had substantially moved to the left while he was on the court, and wanted the areas of law that he had helped to create maintained. All right. So, with Stevens' announcement that he was going to retire from the court, once again, the Obama White House came up with, creative individuals along with the same cast that had been considered the first time around, of course, minus Judge Sonia Sotomayor. This time around, once again, you had Solicitor General Elena Kagan, Judge Diane Wood of the Seventh Circuit, Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano, and other judges on the D.C. Circuit and the Ninth Circuit. Ultimately, the choice boiled down to Solicitor General Elena Kagan, all right, who was nominated in May of 2010 to replace Justice John Paul Stevens, okay? Now, the unique thing about Solicitor General Kagan was the fact that she was the first nominee to the Supreme Court in decades, all right, who had no prior judicial experience before reaching the bench. As a matter of fact, the last justice who joined the court prior to Kagan in 2010, who had no prior judicial experience, was then Associate Justice and later Chief Justice William Hubbs Rehnquist, all right, who had served most recently before his appointment to the court as an Assistant Attorney General in the Nixon administration, okay? So it's not like it's a crazy thing, folks. Most of the justices in the court's history did not have prior judicial experience. And some of them went on to become the court's greatest justices. Look at John Marshall, okay? Just as a great example. Look at John Marshall Harlan, all right? Earl Warren. Loads of individuals who never had any judicial experience became some of the court's greatest justices, all right? So it didn't matter, all right? And Kagan, prominent attorney and solicitor general and prominent figure in academia at Harvard, certainly had the qualifications to sit on the court. And, there was, some opposition to her nomination due to her views and the fact that she had never been a judge. But, these were, pushed over and ultimately not able to derail her confirmation, all right? And ultimately, she was confirmed by the U.S. Senate in August of 2009 by a 63 to 37 vote, all right? Filling that vacancy and giving President Obama his second appointment on the court, all right? Second and final, ultimately. So President Obama thus had become the only American president in history who named exclusively women to the Supreme Court. A great thing indeed, all right? Now, Elena Kagan has been a liberal just like her predecessor, John Paul Stevens, on the court. However, in some areas, she is slightly more moderate than what he would have been in certain cases. But nonetheless, she is overwhelmingly a committed member of the court's liberal wing and is true to the cause, all right? Not too long after she was confirmed, some years later, Justice John Paul Stevens, former Justice Stevens, was interviewed with respect to Kagan and his thoughts about her, and he remarked that he was overwhelmingly pleased with her performance, and there were certain areas that he might have decided otherwise, but overwhelmingly he was pleased with his successor on the court, all right? And that was good to know that Justice Stevens approved of who replaced him on the Supreme Court, okay? So last but not least, a third vacancy, which I'm sure you all remember quite well, occurred during the Obama presidency for the Supreme Court. In early February of 2016, Justice Antonin Scalia passed away. All right? This came as a shock to everybody, as Scalia had shown no signs that he was ill or certainly infirm to the point where death was imminent. All right? And, this was 9 months before the presidential election of 2016 and 11 months prior to the next president being sworn in. Of course, President Obama had termed himself out at this point and was not eligible to run for another term in office. Okay, so in any case, we were getting a new president. Okay, and even though, all right, the president had every right to nominate a candidate to fill this seat, which is what he ultimately did, the U.S. Senate, under the leadership of Mitch McConnell of the Republican Party, refused to consider anyone President Obama put forth to fill this seat. All right? President Obama would ultimately nominate D.C. Court of Appeals Judge Merrick Garland, now, of course, U.S. Attorney General under the Biden administration. Obama chose Garland as a candidate who would please candidates on both sides of the aisle. And indeed, even though Garland, had the approbation of both Democrats and Republicans as an acceptable nominee, the Senate Republican leadership nonetheless still refused to even grant the man the dignity of a hearing. Okay? McConnell cited that because this happened during an election year, that the next president should have the ability to fill the seat. Okay, even though this happened 9 months, a whole term of a pregnancy prior to the presidential election, okay, and 11 months before the next president was sworn in, they were going to hold this seat open for basically over a year until the next president was sworn in, which is ultimately what happened, okay? And, it wasn't so much that it was a presidential election year, but who was being replaced? Justice Antonin Scalia was arguably one of the court's most conservative members. And to have him replaced by anyone nominated by President Barack Obama was unacceptable in the eyes of the Senate Republican leadership. Whoever Obama nominated to replace Scalia would definitely push the court to the left. Okay, and that is not something they were about to let happen on their time. And so they deliberately held that seat open all the way until the inauguration of President Donald Trump, all right, who of course would nominate Neil Gorsuch to replace Antonin Scalia, all right? So President Obama did have 3 Supreme Court appointments available to him during his presidency, but he was only able to fill 2. All right, thanks to the Senate Republicans in 2016. All right, but you notice their hypocrisy because with the death of Justice Ginsburg in September of 2020, a situation of, even closer dynamics happened that year versus 2016. This was literally 2 months before the presidential election. Within a week of Ginsburg's death, President Trump nominated Judge Amy Barrett to replace Justice Ginsburg. The Senate, of course, still under the control of the GOP at the time, moved at record speed to get her confirmed prior to the presidential election, and doggone it if they didn't do it. Amy Coney Barrett was confirmed to the Supreme Court a month after her nomination in October of 2020, just before the presidential election. Pointing out the hypocrisy of the Republicans, folks, not to fill this vacancy, would have been unthinkable to them. To allow, in this case, it would have been President Joe Biden to have this vacancy. The Republicans weren't about to let that happen, no matter how close it came to the presidential election. But you had almost a whole year before the presidential election in the case of President Obama, all right? And, but the Republicans refused to act on it, okay? And in this case, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was one of the most liberal members of the court, and the Republicans, getting the chance to replace one of the court's lion liberals with a conservative, would push the court to the right, and that's exactly what they did. Just to point out the hypocrisy involved with Supreme Court politics, all right? They were not going to let Barack Obama replace a conservative with a liberal, but they would be damned if they were going to let the opportunity pass them by if they couldn't replace a liberal, for them not to replace a liberal with a conservative, all right? So they were going to replace the liberal lion, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, with a conservative come what may, all right? And that's exactly what they did. They were not going to let that opportunity pass them by come what may, all right? So that's just pointing things out. So, but enough about the politics of it all. Those were President Barack Obama's two appointments to the Supreme Court of the United States. Justice Sonia Sotomayor in 2009, replacing Justice David Souter, and Justice Elena Kagan in 2010, replacing Justice John Paul Stevens. All right? So those are his two appointments to the Supreme Court. If you have any questions or controversies, leave them down below. I'll be happy to answer them. If you like this video, learned a thing or two from it, drop me a like. I greatly appreciate it. And if you've not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so now. I would humbly appreciate it more than words could say. All right? This is that little red subscribe button, and we will be in business. Take care. Stay safe out there. Thank you again for listening, and I'll talk to you at the next bite. Peace.